Following readings are from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. We read from both scriptures each week as prescribed by Yogananda Ji and his Guru Sri Yukteswar Ji, who was guided by Babaji to compare the two scriptures to show the same underlying truths between them. Today's topic, as with the Christmas tree and everything going on and the music classes that we've been having, what was the star of Bethlehem? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Divine vision is the opposite of worldly sight. Divine vision sees God's presence behind all outward appearances. Worldly sight sees appearances merely, quoting even the blazing wisdom of a saint. A master to the worldly man is a human being with, perhaps, a slightly better attitude than the norm. The scriptures therefore strive to demonstrate how the divine consciousness, when openly active among men in the lives of great masters, must never be viewed as an expression of ordinary human consciousness. To seek the presence of divinity behind the life of a great master is to prepare oneself to recognize that same divinity also in lower manifestations, until at last one beholds God everywhere. Thus it was that Paramahansa Yogananda, on observing his new disciple Swami Kriyananda struggling with the contrast between the Guru's human appearance and his inner divine reality, looked at him deeply one day and said, "If you only knew my consciousness." The story of the birth of Jesus Christ contains an account in the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 2, of the Star of Bethlehem. The wise men who saw Jesus in his manger said, "We have seen his star in the east." And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. This account was important, for it showed all mankind that Jesus was a divine incarnation and no ordinary man, that he brought divine consciousness on earth, even though he would play a human role among human beings, and that others too, by receiving him in their inner hearts, would acquire power, as the Bible puts it, to become the sons of God. The scripture enjoins us to meditate on the lives of great souls, that we may discover our own latent spiritual greatness. As the Bhagavad Gita puts it in the 4th chapter, "Who knows the truth touching my births on earth and my divine work, when he quits the flesh, puts on its load no more, falls no more down to earthly birth. To me he comes, dear Prince." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda. This poem is entitled, "Rock Me to Sleep on Thy Bosom of Peace." Thou hast come into my temple at last. The doors of my senses are open wide. The bird of darkness has taken wing. I tune the harp strings of my heart and sing a song of my ages-old love for thee. My song will be newly costumed with the fresh notes of my soul. Wavelets of my song will dance in rhythm with the heavings of thy great ocean of cosmic consciousness. Growing to great billows of devotion, they will move steadily to thy shore. O lullaby of all soothing, rising, crashing waves, sing to me the song of my beloved mother, eternity. O anthem of divine love, rock me sonorously in thy cradle of cosmic vibration, to bring all my restless delusions to sleep at last on thy great bosom of peace. This reading is a wonderful one to have at the time of this holy season. Again, just to be clear, Christmas Day, the 25th of December, is the celebration of the birth of Jesus in this world. We sometimes explain it as Jesus Jayanti. And again, it really is like that, because every time a great soul comes down onto the earth, it's a blessing to all the earth. Of course, there will be some who follow those teachings specifically in their lives. But then again, what's one life? How many different paths have we followed, life to life? It's only that when we become very serious about finding God, as Master said, first God sends you books and teachers, not just in this life, but in past lives. But when we get very serious, then we as Sri Yukteswar writes in the Holy Science, that we basically attract the attention of a God-realized guru who affectionately tries to help us and bring us out of delusion. And that relationship, once formed, stays and continues on life after life, once it's really formed. Master said to one of his disciples, I lost sight of you for a few incarnations, but now that I've found you again, I'll never lose sight of you again. And often that disciple would remind him, don't forget, you said you would never lose sight of me again. And Master said, I remember, I won't. Sometimes when we share that in the discipleship class, that story, people will sometimes say, oh, how lucky that disciple was that Master found him again. But Master didn't lose him in the first place. It's a nice way of saying, you lost sight of me for a few incarnations, but now I gotcha. And so really feel that that's what Master is saying to us. And we say, willingly, Master, please. I don't want to go anywhere else, because everywhere else leads to this. But when I'm with you, everything is fine. And so and yet Master was not obviously wrong. He was perfectly right. He was even truthful to say, I lost sight of you. I lost sight of you because you went away. That's why I lost sight of you. But even then, he probably didn't really lose sight of him. But what if he had said, you lost sight of me for a few lifetimes? Yeah, think about that. I mean, we don't remember our past lives, so it's like, oh my God, the things you did, oof. I could tell you stories. That's why God lets us forget these things lifetime to lifetime. Master explains it. He said, look, there's enough trouble in one lifetime to then have another lifetime and to remember all of that. And you meet somebody and be like, I still remember when you stole all my property when we were living together on Pluto. I mean, the person's like, well, I don't have it now either. I mean, what can I do about it? Sorry. It's just start with a clean slate. Let it all go. Even in this life, we were talking, it's coming to the beginning of a new year. Let's let this life go, this year's situations too, the things we're holding on to unnecessarily or unhelpful, let's let go. Because every time we let go of one of those things, we have more strength to grab onto Master's hand. You see? We don't need, what's in this hand? Who needs it? Now I can get you with both hands. And so it's very important to remember also, though, that when Master said it sweetly to the disciple, I lost sight of you, he was putting it in a kind way. He was putting it a way that the disciple could understand and appreciate and feel encouraged. As opposed to, man, you just barely made it here in this lifetime. I hope you can stay. He was always encouraging. Swamiji said that Master spoke to people in just the right way that they would remain open to him. And so we should consider that in the way we approach people. I was mentioning to someone the other day, you can tell the whole story, or you can tell that part of the story to someone else that would be the most helpful to them. And that's really the point in anything that we do. Why not be helpful? If somebody's open or somebody needs it, And so we saw that with Swamiji too all the time. When somebody came in very sort of egotistically, nice to meet you, Swami Kriyananda, you've wrote a lot of books. I myself have written a book also you might be interested in reading, and here's a complimentary copy already highlighted for you. They would sort of impose that. And he said, I just finished reading a new book. I'd love to have your feedback on it. When I first heard that, I thought, wait. But I realized, why would he say that? He very well knew, but that person was so full of pride, so it seemed, and I'm sure they had many other sterling qualities, that he tried to approach them through their pride. I'd like to have your comments. I'm sure you'd have a lot to say. Well, naturally I would have plenty to say. And then they would say, I'd be happy to read it. And maybe in reading it, some of that could get into them. Some of that could help them. Thank you. Some of this needs to get into me. I've been sick for a week in a very non-contagious way. And it's still kind of little remnants of it are with me. So again, he would approach people in the way they could receive. Another thing Master did that Swamiji mentioned all the time is he met people where they were. And so I remember saying once there was a boy or a young man who wanted to come here to take Kriya classes. He lived far away, and he needed a reason to come to explain to his parents why he was moving to Chennai for a month and take the level 4 classes. And so I said, well, what could you tell them? He said, I could tell them I want to find God and be one with Him. I said, yeah, you could. What else could you tell them? Is there anything, other reason for coming to Chennai? And he said, well, he was an accountant, and he said, well, there is some accountancy exam that somebody invited me to join in for free that I don't even want to take, but it would be a reason to travel to Chennai and be here for it. I said, how about go with that? It's not, I said, and you have to take it too. You can't say, I'm going for accountancy. If you say it, you have to go. But then you can also do this. And so why not tell them that they can understand and appreciate? Then he became an expert. Just that was the one lesson. And from then on, he had all of these expert ways of handling situations. It's diplomatic. Why? Because most people don't want to know. When we were in Alwarpet doing these satsangs, a little smaller, when we had 30 people, if we had this many people, forget it, you'd be in the kitchen. There was no room. And those of you who were there, he's not kidding. So there was no way to hide what we were doing. The secretary of the complex was the door opposite us, the only door in the entire place, and the owners lived right above. So we weren't trying to hide what we were doing. We were respectful. We did the things you need to do carefully when you're in someone else's apartment building who wasn't necessarily asking for Ananda Sangha to move in next to them. But luckily, it was very harmonious. It's sweet because it was Kartikai Deepam yesterday or Friday. And I was wanting to tell a few friends when we were talking that day, the first time Jyotishji and Deviji came to visit us in Alwarpet, it's just a small little place. So they were walking up the stairs, and at the top of the stairs, you either go right into, well, I guess for you all, right into Ananda Sangha, or left into the neighbor's house. And don't go into the neighbor's house. But it was Kartikai Deepam, so they had lit all of these lamps on the stairs outside their house, made this beautiful kolam, and outside our door, shall we say, there wasn't any of that. So naturally, Jyotishji and Deviji came up the stairs and they went, oh, how beautiful. And they started to go into the neighbor's house. And the neighbors were there. They said, come in. And they sat down and they had tea before even dropping off their suitcases. And they became friends for the whole rest of their time that we lived there. So I think it was probably meant to be. We would see that too with Swamiji, that he would have certain friends that were outside of Ananda that he connected with, and you knew he was trying to help them. And our neighbors would say, those people are just so nice. And we'd say, very nice, But it was a real connection. The wife opened up about some of the problems they were having with their son and so on, and Jyotish and Devi have a son and grandchildren, so they could connect on that level as well. So anyway, Kartigai Deepa made me remember that. But it was sweet too because our neighbors could see something in them. There's something they appreciated. But it isn't always the case. So in other words, I don't mean with Jyotish and Devi, I mean with anybody, anything. So in other words, when you're trying to reach someone, reach them at their level. And don't think of it as a lower level or a higher level or anything like that. That's an important point because it can sound sort of pretentious, like, I'm speaking in words that you can comprehend. I don't mean it like that. Be appropriate. Consider their reality. But, for example, there's a story that Swamiji would tell of Ramakrishna. Well, I don't know if he told it, but anyway, I heard it. Of Ramakrishna that some actors came to visit the ashram. And they were there, and they were, traveling troupe of actors, especially in those days, kind of a wild bunch. And the disciples, some of them, were sitting there kind of... Oof, did it get very worldly in here all of a sudden? And so after they left, they made a few snide remarks to Ramakrishna, and he said, oh yes, well, they are very worldly, but when they turn to God, he said, they will get there much quicker than you. He said, because they know how to love. You see? And so it's very important to remember. For example, Swamiji said he noticed that with certain businessmen, disciples of Master, they had been businessmen all their lives, but when they turned their attention towards God, they progressed very fast because they had worked on the power of concentration and so on. So we never want to look at someone and judge them at all, first of all, period. But even so, especially not according to their present state. Any more than we should judge ourselves or identify ourselves by our present state. Swamiji said, identify yourself with your aspiration. What is it you're reaching towards? Think of that. And yes, I may have all kinds of troubles, but so what? This is what I'm trying to do. A lot of those things will fall away. There was one man of Master's, a disciple, of Master's, who was an alcoholic. He was addicted to the stuff. And he would also meditate and try to practice Kriya. And his friends laughed at him. Said, look at you. How can you even see straight enough to find your Kriya Mala? And he said, well, look, I'm drunk. I can't help that. But I can also do this. Positive thing. And so his sadhana was to have the Kriya Mala in one hand and the whiskey in the other hand. We don't teach that technique. And so he would do some kriyas, and then he would take a little whiskey. And he just did it this way. This is how he did it. And one day, as he was doing that, and he had the bottle, he said, what do I need this for? And he let it go. And he pushed it aside. It's wonderful. He was able to move past it. And we should think of that if we have certain bad habits, certain situations, certain wrong things that we do that we don't want to do. And as Arjuna says, it happens against our will even, as if some force drives us to do it. As Swamiji said, try to put more and more weight on the good side of the scale. So to tip the scales in your favor. Do what you can to withdraw strength from the bad side, but don't dwell on it. Just do more and more good. And eventually that will tip things in your favor. He said, even from my own experience in working through things, I did what I could with whatever bad habits I had, but I put as much on the good side as I could. And it worked. We didn't see any bad habits in him, but this was his own process. And it was real. I once tried to basically say to Swamiji, well, thank you for going through the appearance of tests, because that helps us in our tests. But of course, you're such a Mahatma that it was probably just no trouble for you at all. And this came up in the context, some of you may remember from the New Path or the Answer movie, where he was editing the commentaries of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam that Master had dictated. And he was by himself at the monks' retreat, and other monks would come in and say, "Hi, I'm going to see Master," or "Hi, Master called me," just me, and would go and see him, and Swamiji would just sort of be there, abandoned, editing these commentaries, and had all these doubts of Master all of a sudden. He said, again, against my will. I didn't want to think any of this, but it was just like being whispered in my ear and so on. So he went through a difficult, really just a terrible test of doubt. And it went on for 3 months. Afterwards, when he finished editing that and he gave it to the head editor, what Swamiji had said from the beginning was, listen, these were, just to tell the whole story, these were magazine articles that had already been published in Master's magazine. And there was punctuation problems, letters that were capitalized that shouldn't be, things like that. And so Swamiji it was really almost impossible to make a correction, in a published magazine. You really need it printed out, double-spaced, so you can write comments everywhere. So he was having to squeeze in all these little things, and it was really hard to decipher. I'm sure he could have. But anyway, the head editor just said, "Oh, we can't use that," and threw it out. Just like that. And Master was furious with her. And he said, Master said, "If you gave me $1 million, I wouldn't have gone through what he went through to do that work." And so, first of all, Master, what did he need $1 million for? I mean, he could just, there's $1 million if he wanted to. But he was also showing it wasn't just what Swamiji did with the editing, but the tests that he went through. He was acknowledging it was a real test. So Swamiji told this story once in a video that he was recording, these commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. And at the end of it, when he was done, I said, because Dharmini and I were there, and I said, "Swamiji, thank God you passed through that test for all of us." And I meant it. I mean, it wasn't insincere. Because he nodded, and then when I said for all of us, he said, "Well, but for me first." And not, "Look, I had to get mine." It's not that. It's saying, look, it was a real test. I had to go through it. These tests are real. So it's a very two-sided way we have to look at the spiritual path. In other words, that's one way to look at it. It's either a very fine balance, or you just have to consider all aspects, and that's maybe less stressful. Just there's always truth in any side of it, a lesson to be learned. So, for example, on the one hand, we want to feel that God will never let us down, God will always help us, and God will push us forward, and is. And even if we mess up disastrously, oh well, that's one lifetime, just start again. And we will get there in the end. And that's true. On the other hand, we also want to mean business, as Master said. We want to be serious about it. We want to say, I'm here to find God, and I want Him now, and I'm going to do what I can every day to get there, thinking positively about getting there, not negatively about, oops, I did this today, that's wrong, and I did, not the negative things. That's the only problem with that focus, is that sometimes people can say, yeah, but I'm not really focused. Look, I mean, this world is set up to unfocus us. Even that, we're saying Om Guru, and they say, what's that? Oh, the new movie coming out? Oh, Rajani has a new movie. His last movie I saw was pretty good. And, remember that one the time before? And suddenly there's the whole mind. Nothing wrong with Rajani, God bless him. But I just mean the whole world is set up to say, don't go within. Come and play with us. And so that's Maya. So if we're trying at all, we're pushing against the whole stream that is going in the other direction. So be glad, celebrate, but also be serious, because it is serious. Master said to one disciple, it's a rather chilling story, but it has a happy ending. I have learned over the years to tell people, because I like a little excitement and drama. And Dharmini has pointed out, is this a happy ending? Tell me right now. And then so it's a happy ending. Okay, then continue. It's not a happy ending. Then forget it. Who wants the story? Master was sitting with another disciple, and he rolled up a piece of paper into a cone shape. And then he said, "Come here," to her. And she didn't like that because when she was growing up in America, when you did something in class as a child that was the teacher deemed to be stupid, you had to sit in the corner and wear a cone-shaped hat. Can you imagine? I mean, why not just, burn the children alive? I mean, it's just so humiliating. And it's called a dunce cap, Here we would call it, what, an idiot topi or something. What?
Fool's cap.
Cool's cap? Fool's cap?
There's even a size called fool's cap.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So fool's cap, idiot's cap, empty-headed person is what my one cousin told me. One of these words is munda or something like that. Anyway, thank you. Yeah, just nod every now and then. It encourages me. So she saw that cone shape, and because she hadn't been all that, she'd been a little slow at school at times, and she'd suffered this humiliation, which is entirely the fault of the children and the teacher and the system. But anyway, it's rough. So when she saw that, and he said, you can just imagine, "Come here," she said, "No." And he said, "Come here." And she said, "I won't." And then he said, "Come here." And so she did. And she knelt in front of him, and she just cried because of that pain. And he patted her on the head. That was it. Sweet story. He added, however, he said, "If you had resisted me one more time, you would have left the spiritual path." Now, what was that for? Was he saying, like, he looked at the paper and said, "I think I'm going to have some fun with her"? No. She had that karma in her, probably, that there was a part of her that was resisting. There's a part of all of us that's resisting. If there wasn't any part of us resisting, we'd be in God fully. So that's really what we're working on, is getting rid of inner resistances, is one way to look at it. And to accept, first of all, that we have them and be at peace with that. That's just the state. And then work on saying, "Master, I'm having more fun with you. Who cares about this thing that I'm hanging on to instead?" Okay, but work with yourself kindly and gently, just as Master did. He didn't come and say, "I will free you from this pain forever." Wow. No, he didn't ridicule her. He was gentle with her. But he probably saw, I'm guessing, meaning I'm sure he saw, but it's my interpretation, that tendency to resist in her and was trying to help her get over it. And so it wasn't that he was saying, "I set this test up for you, and if you had failed my test, you would have left because I would have sent you away." No, it was her own karma. But she fought that battle and she won. She felt humiliated from the past. He wasn't humiliating her. He didn't say, "Come here, idiot." He wasn't insulting her. But he knew maybe also she had to release some of this pain. That's helpful too. You've got to be able to talk to someone about things that are going on inside of you. And so you've got to find the right person. As Dhyanaji was saying, you try to call a friend and say, "I'd like to talk to you about one problem." Great. First, let me tell you about my problem, which I'm sure is much bigger. Oh, my God. And, oh, look, that's all the time we have. And then, so you want someone who can listen also. But remember that, too. Be a friend who does listen. We're looking for listeners, but we can also be a listener. Sometimes people just want to share. They don't really want... Okay, you know what you do? I'll tell you. First of all, tell him... So it's not necessarily that you need to give all solutions. Just listen and receive. People usually know what they need to do, and also their solution may be different than whatever you've thought of. But it's very supportive that way, because people also feel cared about when they're listened to. And it's just really that simple. And do so in a caring way. "I was told to listen, so you have 10 minutes. Solinga. I'm listening." Yep. Okay, 5 minutes left. Go ahead. No, mean it. Mean it. And if you say, "You're kidding, all I ever do is listen," well, then maybe let that person talk to someone else. So the masters see in a way that we don't see. And also, we should be so grateful that we do see enough to appreciate them. That's what this first line is about. It's one of the things that it's about, that Prasanna read. Divine vision is the opposite of worldly sight. Divine vision sees God's presence behind all outward appearances. Worldly sight sees appearances merely, coding even the blazing wisdom of a saint. A master to the worldly man is a human being with perhaps a slightly better attitude than the norm. This was true of Master. He lived, I told you, Swamiji was at the monks' retreat editing these commentaries in the desert. Master's house was a few miles down the road. And next to Master there was a neighbor. And Master had some fruit trees on the property, and he would call the neighbor over sometimes and give him some of the fruits from the trees. And Swamiji and another disciple met that man once without Master, and the man said, you know who, I don't know what he called him or how he referred to Master, maybe the Swami, because he might have been known as that. He said, he's a little, but heart of gold. He's got a heart of, that's what he could see. He could see he's a good man, a little crazy, but a good man. And so don't be surprised if when you share things about what you're doing, or you just are who you are, if people with, at the present time, worldly vision don't see it. I mean, if you can, remember to a time before you came to the spiritual path and might not have regarded spiritual things all that greatly. You might not have had such a time, being born pure, but I myself had plenty of moments like that, just kind of like, yeah, right, I don't know if I believe in all this. And I just hadn't been, my eyes hadn't been opened yet. What happened was I didn't have a description of the spiritual path and God that was attractive to me. I don't fault any of the things I was exposed to. They were perfectly fine, but they didn't touch me. And whatever there was, I didn't like. I remember once I was in, of all places actually, it's before long ago, in 1990 something, early 90s, I was in Adyar. I don't know if you remember Adyar back then, but it was basically Theosophical Society and trees. It was almost nothing there. And so I was there, and I went to the Theosophical Society bookshop, and I saw this book on the commentaries on the Gita, and I said, okay, all right, I give you one chance to tell me something, because I was just not interested in God at all. I didn't know God was everything that I was looking for, but I was looking for truth. That's how I thought of it. I didn't even put it that way. And I opened the book to a random page, and it said, beware the constant treachery of the senses. And I went, how paranoid, how ridiculous, making people always afraid they're being tricked by the senses. Who was being tricked by the senses then? Me. Or at least the ego, just like you're not tricked. That's right, I'm not tricked. Yeah, keep listening to me, the ego, and you'll never be tricked. It's one big trick. That's the whole point. You could say, what is Maya and delusion but a trick? We are the body. Oh, are we? Okay. Not at all. This whole life is really a trick in a way, but we're starting to see through it. And also God sets it up that way. There's the beautiful story that Master tells of a man who is a yogi and also is working on his worldly desires. And I'm not going to tell the whole story because you really have to hear Master tell it. But still, it's in the recordings. And the man says, okay, he was a yogi, but he was always sick. So at the end of the life, he said, God comes to him and says, what do you want for the next life? He says, for the next life, I want to be a yogi, but I also want to be healthy. And so in his next life, he's born a yogi, and he's born very healthy and strong, but he has no money. And so he can't, as Master said, he has no money to feed his hunger. And so then he dies in that life, and so it goes on. But after 6 of these lifetimes, and it's so fun to hear Master tell it, because he said, so in the next incarnation, wait to see what happens to him next. And then at the end of that life, God comes and says, what now? Because by this time he has this whole list. I need health, and I need wealth, and I need a wife, and she has to live a long time, and all these things, because he's learned the hard way. And then he says, I don't want anything. He said, I know all your tricks. That's the link. He said, nothing doing, is the way Master puts it. You have to be with me. If I am in Hades, and if I'm in hell, and you are there, you will make it into a heaven. And he said, if I'm in heaven with fools, they will make it into hell. You must be with me. Be with me first. And because we find that all those things that give us that joy, that satisfaction, it doesn't last. That's the only problem with it, and it is the problem with it. It just doesn't last. And so we want something that does last. And so it's really almost that simple. But there are some areas where we're still working out those lessons, and there are some duties we have in this life that are real. So, God also gives us ways to work out our karma. So don't view everything, circumstance in your life as sort of a burden or sort of unnecessary. It's not at all unnecessary. There's the beautiful story of the sadhu who had grown to a certain level of power. And one day he was having his lunch, and a crow came over to peck at it. And he waved his hand in the direction of the crow. Not just to swat it away. And the crow fell over dead. And he kind of went, oh, look at that. I have some power now. It's like, if you have some power, why don't you bring the poor thing back to life? But anyway. So then he had a vision of God that said, to grow further, you need to find a guru. And God gave him the address, and I don't know if they had Google Maps back then, but anyway, he found the place. And he was surprised to find that this guru was, first of all, a woman, which was very insulting to his ridiculous ego. And sorry, but it's just true. And then she was married, and he said, knock, knock, knock. She opened the door, and he basically, I have come. Do you want to bow now or bow later? He was very, because he's a sadhu, and here she is, this, this worldly householder wife. And she said, I'll be right with you. Sorry. Don't make me lose it now. So she said, I'll be right with you. But I'm busy, I'm busy serving my husband and my family. And so please just wait outside. So he's waiting outside, because presumably they had a small home. And he was getting more and more impatient. Just, here I am, a guest, and of such a grand stature, and I'm waiting for this. And then she called out through the window, please be patient, sir, I am not your crow. So then he was quiet, because he realized she knew. And she was able to teach him one thing, which is that service to others is ennobling. And, doing your best to your fellow beings. In her case, she said, I'm finding God through serving my family. And she was. Because you can serve your family and find God, or you can just serve your family. So remember, just the act of doing it is something, but doing with God consciousness, thinking of how God is coming through these people to you, or God is flowing through you to them, whatever works for you, that's what makes it karma yoga and not just karma. That which frees you. So just the action itself is okay, it's not bad, but better to do it with attitude. All of the spiritual path really is about an attitude adjustment, an attitude change. So if someone says, well, it's just your attitude is everything. And think of it too, even the word attitude, I believe in with airplanes, relates to whether the nose is pointing up or down. And so that's our whole thing, Is the nose pointing up? No, I'm joking. But are we looking up? Are we moving up? Are we wanting to go up? Are we aimed in the right direction? That's another way to put it. Identify yourself with your aim, which is always high. And Master is always there to show us the mountaintop, to remind us. I was sharing a quote of Master's with a few friends the other day, and they said, "Gosh, what does that mean?" I said, I don't know. I have no idea. And that was the wonderful thing about, I could understand the words, but what did he really mean? It's too big. And it's helpful because Master was always there. Swamiji said Master, even in his talks, would suddenly give some startling fact, just to keep, that would really engage your mind. He said, Master just casually mentioned, sometimes a yogi can incarnate in more than one body to work out karma more quickly. Just like, my gosh, just like, well, is that me also? Just kind of. Wow, do we have the same passport? What? How does that work? Which one gets to decide things? Imagine if they sit together. Anyway, it's just breaks the mind, and it's meant to. But that's the thing. As a master, he could see those things. He said viruses come to this planet. So first of all, they come from outside the planet. I don't know if it's all viruses, but certainly he said viruses are evil souls that come from other places in the galaxy to Earth. How do they get here? Is it sort of like all aboard the Virus Express, we're heading to Earth? How do they get here? We can't, anyway, and he said so that they can be punished by medicines. Just amazing. You just kind of breaks your mind, and that's the point. We should always know there's way more to this existence and to God than we can comprehend. And it's good because in the beginning there's so much that you're exposed to that your mind is constantly blown, so to speak. But it's good to read Master and reread because it always, again, lifts our sights way higher. Swamiji talked about that. Our aim should always be higher. Meaning at God. No, it doesn't have to be higher than God, especially since there isn't anything. But he said, for example, he was in a village and that was right at the base of a mountain. And when he had gotten there, it was very foggy and overcast and you couldn't see anything. And then the next morning, he was talking with someone outside and they said, "Oh, look, the mountain is out today." And he looked and he didn't see it. He said, "Really?" And they said, "No, look up." And oh my gosh, there it is. It was way higher than he expected anything to be. And so that's again how we should always set our gaze. And don't be alarmed if you're the only one that in your sort of immediate circle who looks at things that way. It's just the way it goes. It's fine. But then again, expand your circle and include others in your circle because it does help to share our enthusiasms with others with a similar enthusiasm. It's just that simple. We reinforce each other. More than that, Master comes through each of his disciples. And so Master talks to Master through the disciples. I don't mean that you say, now when I tell you this, it's Master talking. I don't mean that. I just mean sharing in love and friendship, support, enthusiasm, and vibration. Some people, they don't have to say anything. But they walk in the room and the whole room is brighter because of their vibration. But they walk into another room and nobody notices anything. Sister Gyanamata, who was Master's most advanced woman disciple, her mother, I don't know that she necessarily saw her at all. I don't know, and I don't want to speak against her, but it's written in her biography. She wasn't a bad person. But near the end of her life, meaning her mother's life, she was always calling out, and Divine Mother, Gyanamata was not always healthy even then. Of course, she didn't have good health later on because Master said she was burning off the karma of other people. But her friend said, I would watch Edith, which was Gyanamata's original name, just lay down after doing all the housework, and her mother would call out, "Edith, where are you?" And she would immediately get up and say, "Coming, Mother." She said unless she was physically incapable, if she had a migraine headache, if she just couldn't, then she wouldn't. But otherwise, she would just go up and help her again. But, did her mother know what a saint she was? And again, mothers are always a special case, anyway. Parents sometimes see us, sometimes don't, and that's okay. But still, I just mean such a saint living with so many people. How many people even recognized her? Even someone came Actually, well, just to tell the story, he came from India, of all places, to meet Master, and she received him. Gyanamata received him, and and he saw her. I have an appointment with Yoganandaji, and fetch him, will you? Just very disrespectful to her as just some servant, perhaps. Then he met with Master, and then he came out of the interview room all inspired and uplifted, and he saw her, and he said, I'm sorry if I was rude earlier. In India, we are taught to bow to all women as mothers, and so I bow to you. And Gyanamata said, well, half the people on earth are women, and most of them become mothers. There's hardly anything special in either of those two facts. She said, if you wish to bow, you may bow to the fact that in this life I have become a renunciate, that I'm living my life for God. So that he bowed again, and I think probably knew at this point, keep your mouth closed and would just walk out the door. But, he didn't see her originally. And so, again, if somebody doesn't see you, don't worry, because somebody else does. And even if nobody seems to see you, God is always watching, always appreciating you. Swamiji said, Master was the best friend I ever had. He would never misunderstood me. He was always on my side. Maya causes misunderstandings, even among best friends. And so we have to get through them. We don't have to fall victim to it, but the test is there. And so, and Swamiji, we felt that way too. He was on our side all the time. Jyotish and someone else were talking about a problem that was happening at Ananda in an office where one person actually wasn't an Ananda member and the other was. And someone said, well, we have to be on her side because she's a part of Ananda. And Jyotish said, no, we're on everybody's side. So try to be that way as best you can. But then when you can, just mix with other saints in the making. It's a valid use of the word saints. That a saint is someone who wants to find God. Is that you? I don't mean, as I've said before, don't put it on your business card. Just, what was it? Dharmarajan, CA, saint. No. Neither. But anyway, so not that, but to say I'm wanting God. That's what I'm here for. And take just celebration in that fact. And so we'll talk more about the Christmas story and so on Christmas Day and so on, and because it's touched on here, but the main point is this divine vision. Strive to have divine vision. Accept the divine vision that you already have some aspect of, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. Somebody came the other day and was saying, I don't even really know. I came for peace. I don't know about all this stuff. I came for peace. That's why I'm here. All this spiritual stuff in God, I don't know. I said, look, you're more spiritual than you think, because everybody wants peace. Why do you think that somehow this will give you peace? Why is, when you think I want peace, the answer is meditation, satsang, temple, God? One simple explanation is try it and it works. So it doesn't have to just be belief or faith. You just take a little bit of it yourself and, this helps me. But it doesn't help everybody if it's not for them right now. But in any case, we can learn a lot of ourselves about ourselves by the thoughts that we just take for granted. We just accept, well, that's obviously true, but it's true for you. Not everybody thinks that way. So just know that no matter what, though, God sees you, God is with you, God is helping, Master is helping, Swamiji is helping, all the gurus are helping, and they are desperate to have you home, even today.